time does that say it is? 10 till, wasn't it?
9:48.
9:48. Thank you, sir. Okay, first item on the workshop agenda today is discuss after-action review regarding EMS response to the DPS facility event. Mr. Doremus?
Judge, Commissioners, you have a document that I sent to you guys and ladies. It's a 6-page document. I'm going to be pretty brief with it. It's listed as confidential, obviously, but we've redacted everything that would have HIPAA-protected information in it so we can make it available if we need to. We kind of do an after-action review on every call in our department. If it's a high sentinel event, cardiac arrest, we sit down and break it apart. So the template did not really change other than the length of the report, obviously. So I'm just going to kind of walk through the pieces of it. The first section is an executive summary explaining the incident, and it also explains that by no means is this a critical, constructive review of anything other than our own response. Meaning, if it alludes to dispatch doing something really well, that's an attaboy for them, but it was not meant to be critical of anything dispatch did or did not do. Same with law enforcement, same with any other public safety response. It was really just a critical review of our response. That's what the executive summary says. The incident overview talks about the day of the event and how that call came to us. And then it gets into a response overview. There's 3 things that we know from our perspective that we can't do to be successful at these events. Whether it's an active shooter drill, whether it's a bus that overturns with multiple people on it, or whether it's this incident that nobody really planned for. And those 3 things is if we mess up the triage, the first people on scene has to triage that event with a high degree of accuracy, or there's bad outcomes. Number 2 is we can't get gridlocked. Think of it as a busy restaurant. I was trying to think about how to relay this to people that are non-public safety. And if the egress and ingress of the kitchen is jammed up to where food can't get in and out, people get frustrated. So on a major incident scene like this, the egress and ingress has to be easily accessible, which law enforcement absolutely nailed it on that. And I do credit, I think, their training to these active shooter events that is drilled into them. But we literally had an easy entrance and an easy exit of the scene, which really helped us tremendously. And then we have to take medicine to the patients. Those are big 3 things for EMS: triage, egress and ingress, and then take good medicine to the patients wherever we find them. The report goes through each of those, and it does an incident overview. It talks about some of the complications of this event. The first one started out with the way the call came in. Dispatch does a really, and I don't know when you started this for sure, but you do an all call, so to speak, that alerts over every radio. So if something big happens right now, the radio will beep beep, no matter what channel you're on, and let you know of major events occurring. So if you're on your EMS primary, you still hear that. I'm not sure how that magic works, but it's been phenomenal. So if we're driving down the road and there's a chase coming at us, we will know that. We can get out of the way, we'll know what's going on, we'll also know to kind of mobilize resources to where that corner of the county is, in case they spike an individual or whatnot. They did that in this event, so we had a little bit of a heads up that a pursuit or a chase was in progress. About 25 minutes before we actually were pulled into this. So you'll see some response times of 10:40-ish is when they were dealing with this behind the scenes, and then 10:55 is when we actually got pulled into that. So there's a time lapse there, but not a delay on dispatch. So if you're reading that as a delay, that would be an inaccurate reading. They're handling that scene for a long time before it came to us. One of the other complications that we noticed was when they build a call for a stolen vehicle, it plugs in the address of where that occurred. So some of the initial responders from our ambulance side saw an address of Chapel Hill, Texas, which is where the incident started. So they're looking at that in their head, they're going that direction. Luckily, dispatch was relaying audibly information about where this call was, because if we would have waited 2 minutes, we would have been past it, because it was so close to our primary station. The good and the bad of being close to us is we were there within 120 seconds. The bad is you don't have a whole lot of time to pre-plan and to figure out really what's going on, so you're walking into an incident that's what we would call an active scene, and potentially an active dangerous scene, unsecured scene, and we're right on top of it. So there was a little time to plan that, but not a lot. Triage went really well. Within 2 minutes, we had a district chief there, a division chief there. We had 10 paramedics there within 2.5 minutes because it was close to our station. So we all showed up. They did a level 3 MPI. You'll see that about halfway down at 11:02. We have 4 levels of mass patient incidents in our protocols. 1 is minor, and 4 is requiring state resources like an ambulance from Austin and different emergency medical task force resources that the state would deploy for us. This was a level 3, so it was right before the level 4, meaning it didn't require state resources, just regional mutual aid agreements. That was pulled into play. Dispatch pulled the trigger on that for us. We really just relayed to them what that is, and then they helped start calling those folks up. And that's probably where I would need to stop and say, from our perspective, I'm sure they did a critical review of this or an after-action review. Dispatch absolutely nailed it from our perspective. They never seen chaos on the radio, and I don't know how you do that on the voice. Very calm, very collective. I even kind of put the words in here of "we got you," because we were asking them to do a lot. Call hospitals, do code blacks at hospitals, call 3 aircraft, call mutual aid agreements. And I don't know how many people you had in the room, but they did all of that, and it would always come back with "that is done and complete," and giving us information. So she is right. She made a comment in her report that it does start with them. And if they start it wrong, we follow the dominoes a lot of the time. So it's imperative that they get that part right, and they nailed it from our perspective. The first critical patient was off the scene at 11:08, the second 11:02. We had all of them off within 20 minutes, 17 to 20 minutes, depending on where you're counting that. There was a little bit of dispatch discrepancy on our side. One of the drivers did not say en route, leaving the scene and arriving to the other scene. We split the scene into essentially two scenes on purpose. We felt like there would be more than the 15 that we originally triaged, because there was potentially some buried rubble in the back that we didn't know if there was people there or not. So we split the scenes to get the critical off early, knowing that we would almost create 2 scenes and create double the radio traffic and create a lot of different things to go on. But it was raining law enforcement officers, which was awesome, but they were coming from everywhere. And we knew they want to help just like anybody else, but getting those critical ones off that did have substantial visual injuries that leave lasting impacts on even just public that want to help, we needed to get those separated. So we separated those early on, moved them across to the hospital. We also felt like if there were some that was too critically injured to make it or sustain a trip, we would be at the back door of a hospital, and we could transition those in. So there was a plan for all of that in place. There was a why behind what we were doing. If I'm going down to the strengths, we felt like there was 5 really big strengths from the department. The rapid response was a strength. I've kind of portrayed it a little bit as a weakness, but trauma dies within minutes. Mm-hmm. So every minute is crucial. So if it had been in Chapel Hill, that's a 9-minute response from most of our resources, or 10 depending on where. So that's a time period that injuries can get worse. So we felt like that was a benefit. We also felt like local aircraft utilization was a benefit. We had what we originally triaged as the single most critical patient in the hands of a trauma surgeon within 37 minutes of impact, which was pretty phenomenal. Just from point of injury to a trauma surgeon putting hands on them. So we felt like that was a big strength. Effective triage and treatment. We don't get to practice that a lot, thankfully. I mean, that's not a skill that paramedics do on a daily occasion on triaging sick and injured patients, and I felt like they did a really good job of doing that. There's a recommendation down at the bottom that I think we can help with some of that in the future, but I think with the tools that we had, they did a phenomenal job with that. And that's really Tanner Jacob. Tanner was first on scene, so I'm giving a lot of credit to him for keeping composure, relaying what he felt like he had, estimating the number of patients that he had, creating the level 3 MPI that really helped them create the resources that we were going to need on the back end of that. And then communications and interagency collaboration worked seamless together. Law enforcement was helping us. Fire department was doing what we call a hasty search, of basically just finding the quick ones before we start uncovering everything. And it was hand in hand on that. So I can't praise the interagency collaboration enough for that. Improvements, always we can improve communication. I felt like our voice, our radio, our face-to-face was amazing. I felt like most of that communication, I don't know that it could improve much. I'm sure there's some things that they think they could do better, or maybe on our side too. Technology communication could have been better. That's one of the things, and we've already had one drill since this event to practice on, it's a communication device called Pulsera. We instituted it about 1.5 years ago for daily patient communication. It replaces the use of a radio when we're giving a patient care report to a hospital or to a surgeon, and it's literally all done through texting type atmosphere. Obviously, we had not practiced that in a mass casualty incident scenario. And there are some things there that will help us. You can create geofencing around that incident. You can click down to 50 miles, 25 miles, and when a regional ambulance comes in, they will hit that geofence and it will alert them of everything going on. So it would really be better communication for responding agencies from outside our region. Doesn't change much for us because we're doing hand-to-hand, face-to-face radio. So nothing on the initial scene would have really changed, but St. Joe's, Waller, Fayette, those agencies that came into play would have gotten alerts on their phones about this is the incident you're coming to, and this is the amount of patients, and this is what you're coming to. So we felt like we can improve that, which also would include resource management. I have Pulsera listed under that too. Minimizing scene times, we have to get better at our outside agencies' scene times. And I go into that a little bit in detail. Our aircraft had a 4-minute skid-to-skid time. Skid down, putting a patient on, skid up, gone. We can't save these patients on scene. They're trauma patients. We can stop bleeding and give them whole blood, but they have to go to a surgeon. So we have to get better at having the same expectations from outside resources as we do within our own resources. Some of the scene times from outside entities, because they have different policies in place, were substantially longer. And then public information. I felt like we could do better with that. Honestly, there was probably more public information going on from social media than I even know about within minutes and seconds. I know that there was videos of the truck coming off the highway that was on social media within minutes, right? So I feel like from a governmental entity, we could do better at getting public information to the constituents that live in this area that aren't getting it from Fox News or social media. So I feel like we can do better at that, whether that's a PIO, a PAD, or some other form of communication that needs to go out to the public. Meaning, it's one thing if Kevin Doremus posts something on social media. It's another thing if the government entity posts something that here's what happened. It can also calm the public and also give a little assurance that it's being taken care of. I know of nothing that went out from the government entities on either side until press conferences. So I felt like we could do better on that. Again, that's not critical of anybody but us. I feel like we could help do better.
Oh, it's true.
And then there's a conclusion that essentially it was an unfortunate event, but I do believe that I don't think we could have done anything different to change outcomes. There's always things we can do better and improve on, and we certainly will. One of the recommendations is halfway down the page, it's talking about a support specialist role. So it's consideration of a district chief support specialist role. We do that in other agencies on the task force side. We don't send a district chief level guy out to manage that scene without support, which would have been great for a support specialist to do Pulsera communication and to create these things. There's no way you can ask Tanner in this scenario to go manage that, triage this. Oh, and by the way, look over here on your phone and
I'm glad
manage
you
that.
mentioned that because as you were talking through all of this, I was sitting here going through my head like, how are they able to manage all of that?
It's a lot,
You know?
and then keeping the big three in mind, like moving them off scene quickly, and so it's a difficult task to ask, but communication through technology is absolutely the future, so we have to improve on that. One of the ways to do that is to add a support specialist role. Fire departments will call them, Charlie's not here, fire departments will call them drivers, right, a chief driver. And that probably is a horrible term because it's way more than a driver, but it does all of this behind the scene for them and allows him to keep a clear mind on triaging and moving of patients rather than building technology. And it just sends a horrible signal. If you walk up and I'm on my phone during that, don't you have something else to do as a paramedic than to be on your phone? So we have to start training the public of what the phone's communication device is really doing. We're doing it on small scale. When we start to transport a chest pain patient, the paramedic will say, I'm not texting, just so you know. I'm communicating with the doctors about what's going on. And they start to learn that. Because if not, then they make an assumption that well, he doesn't care, or he's not focused, or he's
Yeah.
not paying attention. So I think there's ways to do that in the future, and we're gonna play with that on how to get better at that. If there's any questions, that's really the end of
Well,
that.
and after-action reports are really important in educating the public on those types of things.
Sure.
What you went over today helps us educate our public. This is on the YouTube channel, so there are people that are going to be able to see this.
Sure.
And is it being recorded, TJ?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I do think it's important that we let people know what our side of this was, and it's chaotic,
Yep.
to say the least. I know that we've had several conversations about this helicopter in this community, but in this incident, without it, there would have been less lives saved.
More loss of life. Yep.
And so I think that it is time to end the conversation about, is it needed? I don't know how else to say it, but when it's your loved one, you're going to be wanting it. And it's not costing you. So the conversation needs to stop.
That's good. Well, Director, it's quite the report. I'm glad the way you put that together and concise, and I think, I know the press taking lots of notes over here and so forth, and if you have any questions about it, I'm sure they can approach you.
Absolutely. Yep. I told both of them they can reach out.
Okay, great.
It's a great job.
It was a great job.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that job that had to be done was done in a very professional way.
Yes, sir.
Sad situation.
Very professional.
Yep.
Hey, Kevin?
Yes.
In terms of communication with the public, is that something that Everbridge could have been used for?
It was a resource for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Could have been. That would have actually been ideal for the initial. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think we're gonna have to do better with emergency management.
Everbridge is
Period.
a. That might be more of TJ's.
It's a
answer.
mass notification system. And the way that we have it set up typically is we can broadcast to everybody in the community. The issue is when you have these types of emergency situations, you have to have someone on the spot to figure out creating groups for the notification. But I think you're right, it definitely could have been used in this situation.
Who would have triggered, who has like the button for that?
Right,
Emergency
Brian
management.
Radke owns
Okay.
Everbridge.
He was on scene. Yeah.
Okay.
You could have done it from the dispatch center if someone had said, "Hey, do this."
Yeah.
Let's add you one more 1,000 things to do.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, yes, we have the
Yeah,
capability
yeah.
we have the capability of doing that, but in that situation, with the staff that we had on hand and managing 3 aviation assets, multiple ground units, all of the law enforcement, somebody has to go in and enter, much like TJ said, either select everybody, draw a circle, square, whatever you're wanting to do, and then you hit send. Now, when you hit send, what happens is everybody picks up their phone and calls us. And then we have to explain
Good
to
point.
them that you have a message, either you got a voice, whatever you signed up for, because you can get a text, an email, a voicemail, if you haven't ever signed up for it. But most of the time, what that generates is more call volume for us. So we have to be very careful when we send those messages out, what number to contact, because it shouldn't be us in that situation. And I'm not trying to be ugly in
No,
that,
it's
but
a great point.
No,
our
you're
focus needs
just-
to be on managing the first responder assets that are on scene.
Yep.
Well,
At
the
least to your
Everbridge-
worries at that
in-
point.
Yes, sir.
In this situation, Everbridge would have quelled some of the curiosity. It wouldn't have supported anything.
Correct.
And it would just been informational only, so it wasn't necessary to have that out immediately.
Right.
Because social media is faster than
Yeah.
Everbridge.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Accurate or not, social media had
I think
it
the
out
main
there.
thing to get out, if I didn't know anything that was going on, is a brief summary of, because it was literally like an active war zone for a little bit, and people are wanting to know, do I need to get out of the area? Do I need
Right.
to stay in the area? Just general information of this event is occurring, avoid the area of the hospital and this, because there was
agree
people
with that.
driving through the hospital parking lot just to look at 3 aircraft on the ground,
Yeah.
right? And then there was 2 aircraft overhead, video and news media. So it would have helped maybe disseminate and keep people away from the incident.
Mm.
So,
There's always an improvement.
yes,
as
sir.
you say.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, and
Okay.
we also had, look, I think this goes back to, in times of crisis, you fall to your level of training. You talked about several types of training you guys do, and I think sometimes we all say, why are we always doing this
Yeah.
training? But this is one of those incidents where everything worked right. We had contacts from the federal government that once we sent them how quickly the response times were, they were completely impressed with how Washington County handled that. And when I say Washington County, I'm talking about all the public safety
Right.
folks. So it's just phenomenal to have them say that to us and for us to hear it. So thank you for everyone that was involved in this situation, because it was all hands on deck and it was really appreciative.
Amazing. Okay, any other comments about number 1 on our workshop? Okay, item number 2, discuss EMS response to the recent East Texas floods that took place over the past 12 days in response with Texas Task Force 1.
So, first off, a little less somber of an event because it's not affecting our community, but I can assure you it's affecting communities east of I-45. So it's hard to come across as confident in your staff's ability when you have 2 fatalities out of an incident that we just talked about. But I am super confident in the way that they handled that. I thought that they did an extremely professional, well done job, as well as law enforcement, as well as dispatch and the firefighters too. So it's hard to relay that and come across as super confident when there's lives lost, but trust me that they did a really good job with that. This incident, we wanted to take the opportunity to both educate the why behind what we do a little bit in the event that's occurred it's still occurring actually in East Texas. So the first part of this is just really good for new commissioners that may not understand the Texas Task Force and our relationship with them and what that means, because we use a lot of terminology that oftentimes gets buried in some information. So really the state of Texas organized a state water rescue team around 1999 to respond to really when the state has to call 911. When it overwhelms local entities, more rescues than Washington County can handle, which we had in our 2016 floods, if you remember. We had the state of Texas within our EOC operating in our emergency. We did 52 swiftwater rescues that 18-hour period, and the majority of them were done by our helpers when they hit the 911 button. So that's what that is. And really what happens here is there's 8 bailment teams that the state has. A bailment team means the state prepositions a cache of equipment with boats, equipment, SATCOMs, radios, everything you would need to operate, with the agreement in place that if they call and hit the 911 button, we will help them. It's not an automatic. Every time I can call the judge and say, Judge, it looks like it may impact us, and he can say, nope, we're not going, that we're keeping our resources here. So it doesn't mean it's going to strip your county from the resources. And the state does a pretty good job, TDEM does a pretty good job of trying to pick out of that list of folks of who would respond and not be impacted. So if it was coming to Washington County, they probably wouldn't call us, is what I'm saying. Those are the bailment teams that are listed here now. That's not all the teams. That's the one that has pre-positioned cache assets. And if you look at it on a map, it looks like that. So if you put the interstate on there, literally it's almost down the I-35 corridor. It's where they pre-position those boats. The hill country takes a beating every time it rains, so they're the pre-positioned assets there. We worked really hard to become one of those early on. And us being close to College Station, which is the blue dot, helps us be a deployment team that is kind of in their back pocket and can go anywhere without being impacted. I've circled Montgomery County because Conroe's next on the list to become a bailment team. That's a next year thing. What it means is we as a program have to support our rescuers for the training. We have to find the training opportunities. We have to keep them competent up to their standard, whatever the task force standard is. Number 2 is that standard. So they have to have rescue certifications in rope, water, boats, hazmat. They have to get all of that, and then they have to go to Tennessee and be qualified in Tennessee as a boat operator. It's not going to the Brazos River and being trained in the Brazos River. We want to, what the state wants to do, I'm talking out of both mouths here, but what the state wants to do is to train one level higher than anything we could do in the state of Texas, so that we're never putting a rescuer in something that they haven't been trained in. So this is just a flow chart of really when we get a new guy in that wants to be a water rescue guy or gal, the process that it takes. It's literally a 0 to 2 year process before they're credentialed is really what that says. A water squad, when you hear me talk about that, is 6 folks that are trained at that level So 6 folks trained at that level that has 2 boats, a raft, a comms box, a sat phone or satellite communication device, and then a rescue box. So it literally looks like this, which is the equipment the state pre-deploys. Everything from the sat phone communication, because a lot of times we go places, we're just talking on a sat phone instead of cell phones or whatever technology. So 2 boats, those are FC420 Zodiac boats, they're identical. There is a reason why the state uses that boat, and I'll show you a little bit about the capability of the boat in a minute. Typically, the question I get is, where do you stay when they deploy? It's typically an armory. A lot of times it's a camp. There's camps across the state that we have agreements with that we put the guys and gals up in really where we think the storm is going to hit, pre-position them at least 8 hours ahead of time, let the storm come through. When the local jurisdictions get overwhelmed, we're an asset that they can call. So they give us their radios, we communicate with them just like we're part of their response system for that period. And hopefully they don't need us, hopefully they're able to handle that, but there are many communities that don't have swiftwater programs in their communities, so they rely on us. Corsicana is one of those for a while that would rely on us during heavy storms to be in their back pocket. What the boat capability is, we'll see if this plays. This is just a short video that shows the Tennessee training scenario. This is Class 4 water, is what we would call Class 4 water. Videos never do really good justice of it. But we take 50 operators to Tennessee a year in hopes of qualifying 25. It's about a 50% pass fail rate. This is just showing some of the water.
Got to stay above that hole. Are they ready? All right.
So you can't do it in the John boat at this point for showing the video. There are some scenarios. This is actually, I'm going to show you a couple pictures from some recent deployments. This is Sabine River. We pulled a guy off of this house. Just to show you, if we can train in that, we can probably do these pretty easy. It makes these real rescues in Texas, while dangerous maybe in a John boat, seem easy when you've got the operators trained at a certain level. This is a Corsicana one at night. Rarely do we get a night rescue on camera anywhere. This is off the I-45 interstate on a feeder road. The car's on a Jersey bar, on a concrete bar, kind of teetering.
Right now.
Fire truck's on top with some lighting, so we've actually captured kind of a night video that allow people to see. There is some. There's a store behind that.
Have to break that glass if they're able to get in the window.
They just kicked the window
Actually,
in.
you're going to see a dog, so forgive us, but we get the dog. For the record. Maybe not as cautious. There's the dog. Lee literally said, "I'm not coming without the dog in the phone." So you saw him put a phone in there. So, he spent 2 weeks in the hospital with pneumonia. He had his head to the top of the car with his cell phone up on 911 when he called. 6'6".
Medics in Nevada
So
County,
we're
they're
small.
pulling the patient out at this time. The patient is in the boat.
So this particular event, again, I'm going to go through the resources that the state pre-positioned, but there was 50, and this is in excess of the local jurisdictions. So don't think of this as, oh, there was only 50 rescues. There was 50 that the task force operators did. Montgomery County judge reported somewhere around 300 rescues in Montgomery County alone during the rainstorm, but 50 on top of what they were able to do. 300 evacuations that the task force did, and over 300 rescue and search personnel on the scene. When we talk regions, we're talking Texas Division Emergency Management regions, so primarily the purple and the yellow is what was impacted here, Region 3 and Region 4, and primarily purple. The very top part of where you'd see Walker and Montgomery County, that part that shoots up on the yellow, is the only part of Region 4 that was affected. There was 2 lives lost outside of that region in Region 10 and Region 7 from as it came through on the next couple nights on the other side of the state. So the state assets, again, they hit the 911 button. They got 8 water squads, 4 Texas Military Department ground transportation units. They augment our team by providing high-profile vehicles. So we put our swimmers and our boats in the back of the Texas Military Department ground transportation unit, and then we become a bigger force, if you will. And then there was 3 water rescue managers. Typically, if I go out, I'll go out as one of the water rescue managers. There was about 5 aircraft that were deployed for this. And then we eventually stood up a Type 1 team, which is a bunch of structural guys and gals that do more of search than water stuff. What it looks like when we originally deploy is literally the state calls the water managers and says, where do we need to put these resources? That's literally me drawing it out on an iPad, showing them where each water squad needs to go. Remember, a squad is 2 boats, 6 people, and all that cache of equipment. So we pre-position ahead of the storm. They make it nice and pretty using a map like this of what we're going to have in which division. You can see the East Division is where most of our staff was. And you'll see some things in there, that NCTF2 at the bottom, that's a North Carolina task force team. So not only did the state hit the 911 button for this event, they hit what we call an EMAC button, or an emergency assistance for out-of-state teams. So there was 5 teams from out-of-state that responded to this event. I couldn't believe that. Like, I'd call back home and check with the wife, and she's like, I can't believe that's that big of an event. I don't think that the rest of the world really understood what was happening in that little corner of Texas.
Nor did they report on it.
Nor did they report on it very well. But I can assure you there was, from being in the 2015 floods in Corsicana, 2016 floods here, Harvey, all of the hurricanes over the last 10 years, I've never seen water coming through Huntsville, Texas like we did here.
Wow.
We had boats on 10th Street by the university pulling people off cars. And I've never seen water come through Huntsville like that. Out in the county, around the Trinity River, yes, it floods drastic anytime it rains, but not through downtown Huntsville. So there was a lot of water coming through. That was the team that was assigned to us as well, the North Carolina team. Each of the water managers got, and they got some stuff that they've never seen before. You know, each of these teams have their own unique atmosphere in their own states. 14 states were called, 5 answered the phone call for Texas, and those were the 5 that showed up. Just a little bit of the hazards. This is a day after an event. We sent some boats down and did some stuff in this event, and to the dangers of that. It's a T-post marking a drainage pipe on the other side of a road that one of the boat squads, I think it was an Austin squad, hit in the middle of the night. We went back to try to figure out what ripped the side of the boat open. And those are difficult. You can barely see it during the daytime. At nighttime, it's really hard to see. This is just an example of an actual rescue. I've got it cut into segments because it's on a GoPro. This is North Conroe, Lake Conroe, right around the edges of the lake. Where a lot of the times you think of a lake and it's not moving. This entire lake was moving water, I assure you. 2 people in the home that couldn't get out of the home was the scenario for this one. The entire neighborhood, they went house to house.
Hey, we're
It
gonna
did.
get here, so they say they need us.
It did.
Watch for debris.
This is early morning, so they woke up to this in their house. So what he's doing here is, honestly, he had a prop strike when he got close to that house. You didn't really see it, but the lead boat hit something in the water,
could really use
killed the motor
new
for a
prop,
second.
for
We
sure.
always send a safety boat
Whenever
for
we
that
get the
reason.
chance.
So the second boat is acting as a safety boat, just mirroring everything they do to make sure nothing.
I'm
Can you go to the next
losing a little
one,
bit of
TJ?
power and I can feel it.
Okay, so that one should play. There we go. It was difficult to get around the corner of that house and to get up in there without being pushed to the side of the house, so they just did a 2-boat pin maneuver with the outside boat holding one boat to that where they can walk the person out of the house and put them in a boat. Somewhere around 22 is what they pulled out of that neighborhood. You can go to the next one. This probably shows the victim in the boat for a minute. Yeah. And when we're not in boats, that's the Texas Military Department Ground Transportation Unit. There's a Zodiac boat in the back of that one in front of us. And then there's a boat that we're standing in this vehicle. So again, we go 2 by 2 everywhere. They'll drive as far as they can drive. We'll push the boats out, and then we'll go further in the boats. We'll tell the military guys to stay there until we get back, and we'll bring all the people back to them in that boat. Sometimes it's a paddle job, sometimes it's a motor job, just depends on what it is. After the rain goes down, Humanitarian relief is what TDEM uses us for a lot. So a lot of times we're deployed and the judge will call me and say, where are the guys at? I'm like, well, they're still there taking resources to people that can't get in or out of their home. So they do use us as, what is it, DoorDash? I don't know.
Yeah.
They use us to bring food and stuff back and forth to these people that just literally can't get in or out. We do a lot of odd missions during deployments. This was one of them. This was a 4-hour-old infant that came into a local clinic in East Texas, had the baby, needed to get to a NICU. Nobody could fly, essentially, the storming. We tried to get a Black Hawk in to move him. We tried to get a local aircraft in to move him. Kid couldn't get out. We ended up calling the Coast Guard. So the Coast Guard came in, moved that kid to Texas Children's. They literally had to throw a paramedic on board. I happened to be the only guy standing that had a red patch still. I said I might not be a very good one, but we can go. And we moved the kid to downtown Texas Children's. So they ask us to do quite a bit of things that are not always in the scope, just to make sure we get things taken care of. This is us landing at Texas Children's. He literally wasn't there until I started videoing, so it looks like I'm taking a picture of his backside. That wasn't the intent. Drones, we used a lot of drones in this. This is actually a nighttime, or it was day and night actually. We started at nighttime looking for a home that had an elderly female in it that needed to get out. So trying to find our people whenever they leave us. Again, they go out with 6 people. Typically 4 will go out. You'll have a squad leader and then a support specialist role, which again goes along with what I was talking about with our district chief driver. Support specialist role will launch a drone and just watch the guys and gals in the field to make sure we're okay. So this was one that we were trying to get to this trailer house. We asked her to step outside. We could see her on drone of which home they were in, and then it was allowing us to guide the boats and everybody in to get her out. So just using technology to help us get in and out of places. Every house we go to, just like they went in that house and got the little lady out, put her in a boat, we physically have to mark that using resources. Again, it's the day of the thing, and I heard Commissioner Majewski loud and clear saying it's not really the priority during the event, and it's not. The guys in the boat are trying to get people out of these homes, but what we do here to mitigate that is we radio back to the support specialist that's sitting in the truck who does all the data entry. So literally every home in this subdivision was checked. If it has a little person with a half circle over it, means they were a shelter in place and they didn't want to leave, so that if they called us in the middle of the night and we had to go back, we knew where people were left. X's were meant we took people out of that residence. Just some pictures of the reality of what we see. This kid washed off of a car, 5 of them washed off of a car into the trees. The facial expressions probably do a really good picture telling story of what you see when you get to some of them. And some of them were there overnight, right? So they're just physically wore out by the time you get to them. So, and it doesn't always happen as planned. So we were in the EOC, we got a 911 call for one of the military trucks drove off the dam. Again, hard to see. The sun's coming up here. It's a little easier. I can see the yellow line. But you've got 18, 25-year-old guys driving these trucks around with our swimmers in the back. Easy to get off the road. Nobody was injured or hurt, but it certainly causes a delay in everything we're trying to do. And this is just showing the impact of the storm. Somewhere around 27 inches, right, from that time period, right, in that Walker County area. So I tried to put it in perspective to where people would understand it, and I think the governor did a pretty good job of it in our briefing. Is there was more water coming over Lake Livingston than Niagara Falls, right? So when you put that in perspective for a minute, of Niagara Falls being in San Jacinto County and everything downstream of that taking on that water for a period of time, it gives you a good visual of how much water. Sometimes saying cubic feet per second doesn't mean anything to me, but seeing a visual does. So we had an embedded, actually the Regents, the Chancellor's office had a PIO guy that we weren't too excited about, to be honest, that went with us everywhere on this deployment. He was embedded with us, and he put together a 30-second video, so way better than what we can do, and he said we could share it. So that's this. This is actually a response to an 911 call. It looks very dramatic, dramatized. We're back in Lumberton area. then I had the opportunity to be, I don't know if it was an opportunity or not. I was voluntold to be at the governor's briefing and give the state asset resource briefing to the governor when he came to Walker County. So that was kind of the highlight for me personally, is just being in the room and listening. All the state resource folks are around this end of the table, from the military to DPS to Parks and Wildlife. And they just go through you get 20 seconds of briefing to tell them what assets and what we've done during the 7 days of the storm. So if there's questions, I'll cover them, but what I wanted to do and what I was trying to do is give you a visual, because you don't get to see it. And a lot of times I know you feel like, are we really doing the Lord's work, so to speak, when we're out there, or are we wasting time and effort? I can assure you we're not. Are there deployments that we deploy out and we set for 3 days and come home with nothing? 100%. And those are good ones, because nobody got impacted in a negative way. Are there deployments that we go out and do this for 3 days and come home? Yes. And then there's these that last for a long time. So it is a great system. I think it's a great thing that we're a part of. The opening slide, I talked about an MOU
Right.
that the county has signed. And I don't think everybody really fully understands that. It might be good for the media, is every single dollar we put into this comes back to you. Every single dollar. So my time that goes out, that if I get on overtime for that, comes back from the state. 6 guys and gals that deploy, if someone fills their spot back home, which has to happen, they're reimbursed by the state. Their 37% benefit factor rate is reimbursed by the state. Their retirement everything is reimbursed. So it's not that the state is asking us to do something and not get paid for it. The accounting side of it's hard sometimes, because it'll look like it's over or under, but then at the end of the year, you'll see $100,000 of reimbursement from the state. That's to compensate you for all that.
And it doesn't go back in the expense.
No, it never does.
that's
So it just looks like we're over,
hard
right?
for
Yeah.
public to-
Yeah.
So I did want to plug that because I went through it quickly at the first of the slide. So if there's questions, I'll try to answer them. If not,
Please
thanks for
get
the
that
opportunity.
information out, because that's the information that's gonna matter the most.
Yeah.
Yeah. Questions we get, or I get, or what in the world is Washington County sending a boat to East Texas?
Yes, sir.
Well, if it was happening here, we'd love to have that boat from East Texas coming here. but
Absolutely.
Yep.
You help your neighbors. It is not organized chaos. There's no
It's not,
chaos to
yeah.
it,
That's right.
period.
Thanks for the opportunity to share that.
Right.
The boat
Thank you.
program is how many years old?
Since 2007, so
Wow.
we've been doing it a while.
Hmm.
Thanks to you and your team for going through the training and providing this service, because absolutely we want the same service back if we
Yep.
were in chaos, so.
Anybody, any
And
other
that
comments?
coincides with 600 hours of training?
That's our average year. That's combined team. So if we take our entire 12-member team, generally the hours we put in.
You said it was 12 members?
We have 12 members credentialed at that level. 6 of them would go out at a time. So we're always growing a few.
And I think that what most people need to understand is that that level of training is required to be part of the Washington County boat team.
It is. And by the way.
So if you want to be part of that team.
Yeah, and Brenham Fire Department has a guy.
Mhm.
Brian Soar's been a part of it since about 2010. One of our most experienced operators, meets all those standards, deploys. He was my driver, actually. He was my support specialist during this deployment. He's still deployed with another driver. We cycled out and he stayed 14 days. I should have covered that. 14 days is what the MOU says. So our guys stayed from a Friday, 14 days to the next Friday is when they came home. That's the commitment. It can be as short as 24-hour deployments, but no more than 14, and we have to give them a cycle back. Because you got to remember, it would be like me calling you today saying, hey, I need you to deploy. You're calling your spouse, you have plans for tomorrow by now, and saying I'm gone, right? So the commitment on the team side and the spouse side is tremendous, and we try to warn them of that early on. Everybody wants to be a part of it until you have to go for 14 days, and it can be a struggle.
Wow.
So,
Or 21.
yeah.
Remember the deployment, that was 21 days.
That was possible, yes, sir.
Well, any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Drain.
Yes, sir.
Item number 3, discuss file storage facility. Commissioner Mayeski.
It's not near as exciting, but where we're at on that is the inspection is scheduled to be completed on the 17th, and then once we get the results on we'll continue negotiations. So not much more than that. Still waiting on that inspection of the building. It
And
is.
it's been scheduled.
It's scheduled for the 17th.
Right. Then we'll move forward with that project. Anything else there, Commissioner? Okay. Item number 4, discuss courthouse landscape. Commissioner Bullock?
All right, well, obviously, this has been kind of a long process. We went out for RFQ and we initially selected Studio 1619, another provider, but after a couple months of negotiations, the court made the decision, actually, I believe it was on February 6th, to enter negotiations with Terra Lab. There's been a lot of back and forth between our county attorney's office and their general counsel, and we have finally gotten the contract approved on both sides. We just wrapped that up last week. GrantWorks has already taken that contract and inserted it into the ARPA format, because if you remember, that is one of the ARPA projects, and it will be on next Tuesday's agenda. Just real quick, sorry, I'm having issues with my iPad. So there's about 3 steps of this project. Task 1, they're calling it their discovery, inventory, and analysis, where they're basically going to be evaluating the previously completed courthouse restoration project from back in the day. From the Texas Historical Commission. So they are actually currently reviewing all of those documents and master plans and files, engineering surveys, plats, and so forth. That process is supposed to take about 4 to 5 weeks. We did have some preliminary meetings prior, so I'm hoping that maybe that will be condensed, that they've gotten a jump start. Step 2 is the pre-design and programming. So during this, they'll have several different meetings with stakeholders, workshops, and so forth, presentation of an inventory, review of the existing program, and similar renovations, hardscape. That portion, task 2, is supposed to take approximately from 4 to 6 weeks. And then task 3 is the schematic design, which is their, the design plan, identifying the materials, before and after sketches. And then at that point in time, that will be about 6 to 8 weeks. And then at that point in time, they will bring it to Commissioner's Court, and we will make a decision on how we want to proceed. So that's about it.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Thank you. Item number 5, excuse me, EMS Lake Station. Commissioner Hannah?
So this project has been steadily moving along. There's been a lot of issues that we've had to overcome and things that are there. First of all, the property has the city's water line running next to it, so getting electricity to the site has been a challenge because we have to work within the limitations of having that, getting that underground to the site. We also had to work with the Corps in order to do that. On May 7th, a letter was sent to the Corps for the approval of the design. So we are moving forward, and Bluebonnet Electric has been been a really great partner in this project and getting that done. So the next time you see somebody from Bluebonnet, thank them. They've been very cooperative with the county, so we appreciate all the work that they've done. Once we get the electrical, things will move a little bit quicker, but we've got to get that to the site. So do you have anything to add to that, Director Grimus?
No, sir, I don't think so. I think you covered it.
Okay.
We're waiting on 2 letters, one from the city and one from the marina owners.
Yes.
That just allow easement right away for Bluebonnet to do their work.
And all that just recently came up because of the route that we chose to go. The next item, Judge, is the jail kitchen.
That's correct.
We have been in discussions with DRG. Mr. Gondek is the gentleman that is the project manager, and I just recently got an email from him on May 7th saying that they're getting the soil report and the survey done through Gessner. So once we have that, they'll be working more rapidly on getting the plans to the court. The court will then review those documents, and that will be on a commissioner's court. It has been a process. This is one of the projects, once again, that we went with one company, and that company changed the way they function as a company, and we had to go back out for our second company. We're hoping to have all of these projects, cost estimates to GrantWorks by December 31st, as they are all ARPA projects, with the exception of the EMS Lake Station. Once again, that project will be done with money other than tax dollars. So we are hoping to have all of these projects underway. I appreciate all the help from the court and from all you guys who are involved in these projects, because they're pretty massive projects. Especially the jail kitchen is pretty important for us. This jail kitchen has been something that's been discussed over several years during budgets, that it needed to be repaired. The ARPA funds are definitely going to be a godsend for us in that regard. So I don't have anything else. Captain Hensley, it's chief, isn't it? I never get your title right. So Chief Hensley, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I believe they came out last week and did the survey.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's all I know at this time. So
Yeah.
moving forward, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions there? Okay. Hearing no other discussion of any of these items, we will close the workshop at 20 minutes to 11.